Hey, it's Katherine from Brandequip Designs, and today I really want to ask you a question because this is pretty important. Do you read? And if so, do you read books about your industry and specialty? So the reason why I'm asking you this is because I had been meaning to read business type books for years. And then this year, I finally implemented reading into my morning routine, and I'm loving it. Not to mention, it is so helpful. I wish I had been doing this right from the start. And it's like that morning reading time is really my time to read books about business in general, or mindset, strategy, or sometimes even design. In fact, by the way, in case you don't know this, design books are often best purchased in the printed form. You can tell pretty easily if it seems kind of designed out in the sample that you get, or the initial look you get at the book if you're ordering from Amazon, like I often do. Then if it looks designed, then you should probably consider getting that in a printed form because it was designed for print most of the time. But anyway, sometimes the books that I like to read, and a lot of times people read in general, are presenting totally new concepts. But a lot of the time when it comes to design or branding, which is my specialty in my industry, it's not so much new information as much as it's clearly and concisely giving me the words for what I already know, which is in itself invaluable because it helps me better communicate some of these concepts to non-resident experts, aka you, my audience, my clients. Because sometimes what I find is I like to give the big picture as to why what we're doing is important and how it's going to fit into the overall brand development. And so right now, actually, the flavor of the month is this book, Designing Brand Identity. And I wish I had started reading this like back when I first started business, because it's kind of summing up a lot of what I do now as a brand strategist, which I didn't know a lot of these ideas or concepts, or didn't realize the importance of them when I first started. And so I think that this is so helpful, and I'll show you what I mean about being designed out. This is the general format of the books. So if you can see that, it's pretty helpful. Like every page, there's a quote, and there's, examples of, the design, like ideas for, just an inspiration book, and definitions for different types of things. So it's super helpful. It's very inspiring. Just to like kind of read through and be like, I know this. Like it's really a confidence boost right now to be like, oh yeah, I already know this. And it's just reconfirming that I know a lot of the things that I need to know. And that's awesome. But it's also really great because each page is like a different definition for a certain term. And it's like, oh, I've been kind of trying to think of a way to describe this, and there it is right there, and I can kind of jump off of that. And so that's really awesome. And really that's what I found for design books in general. A lot of other types of books present new concepts, which is really awesome, and I can take and bring back to my clients, especially with branding. Branding is so integrated into business itself that, sometimes what I read about business is going to help me, with my clients on a one-on-one basis. If I notice that there's something that they could read themselves and find useful for what they're doing, or even just affect how we approach some of the brand strategy. So another thing I wanted to mention before I end this with my whole you should be reading spiel, which I don't really have, but I do. I mean, you should be reading these kinds of books. It's really great. But the one thing that I want to mention before we end this is that a lot of people start off with having like this really crazy goal of reading books, like 52 books a year. That's a book a week, which is great, good for you. My initial goal when I started this was 2 books a month, and I'm really liking that, but I'm kind of giving myself a bit of leeway depending on the book that I'm reading. For instance, the book right now that I'm going through is like 300 pages or so. Some books take longer, they're more dense. Some books take less time because it's, still a lot of pages, but less dense information. So it really just depends. But don't forget to sometimes go back and reread some of the books that you've read. I actually took last month to go ahead and do that with archetypes because I had read an archetype book and finished it up earlier this year, and I knew that I really wanted to dig into archetypes even more for my clients. And so I went through again, and I learned things that I passed over before because my initial read-through was more about just introducing the concept, and then this next time I went through, it was like I had more of I know what I'm getting into, and I really want to, I was able to pull out different nuggets for each of the different archetypes that I hadn't really recognized in the past. And I'm sure I'll be reading it again, seeing what else I can pull out, because you never read the same book twice, even if you do, because you're always approaching it from a different perspective, whether you realize it or not, because that first read, you can never have that, I don't know what it's going to tell me kind of a deal. And then the next time you go through, it's like, okay, I know this, and you're able to just get more from it. And sometimes it's just good for a reminder. So if you start reading, or if you've been reading, don't forget to just kind of put aside a couple of books that you think you might want to be revisiting again in the future. And don't worry if, you have this goal of reading a certain many books per year in a year. I would say it's a good goal, but sometimes you need to know that maybe you need to revisit one of the books before you keep going with a new one. So yeah, anyway, I hope that you start reading if you haven't been. Like I said, super helpful. Wish I had been doing it since I started, but alas, I kept on putting it on my to-do list and never on my done list until I actually built it into a morning routine. So if that's something that you're working on building, maybe check out trying to do a bit of reading in the morning, so you can start checking off some of the books you've been probably building up on your list. I know I have so many, and my list has grown exponentially because each book I read, it's like, oh, I should read this one next or that one, and then there's the advice, or what do you call it, recommendations I get from some of my other, biz buddies or people I'm following, and just noticing in general. So the list is never ending, and you'll always have unlimited choices, things to read. So it's just a good idea to kind of get started and kind of see where it goes. So that is my tip for the day, what I learned this week, and I hope that was helpful. Like I said, sometimes it's new concepts, sometimes it's just reconfirming what you already know and giving you the language, blog inspirations, quotes, whatever, to go ahead and show up better for your audience and kind of communicate better and more clearly. So, see you later.